you have been following the Very Unofficial Travel Guides for a while, you will know I've been on a lot of cruise ships. Cruising is a type of travel that offers you a lot of bang for your buck and takes you to places that you might not normally visit. And I feel like the popularity of cruising is growing and growing and growing. Probably partially due to all the great videos online showcasing the cruising industry. If there's one thing that's growing faster than the cruising industry, it's people reporting about the cruising industry. I'm proud to be a part of that industry. I love what I do, and I love to help you decide how to plan your travels, be it going cruising, going to Disney, wherever. But would you believe that after all these years and all these cruises and all these videos about cruises, I've never been able to get my sister on a ship until this past November 2023 on the Independence of the Seas. And when you've spent over 100 days on cruise ships like I have, certain procedures, certain things about the cruising experience just become so normal and second nature that you kind of forget that there are parts of it that are really different than, let's say, a normal land-based vacation. And it was so interesting for me to take a first-time cruiser with on the Independence of the Seas and kind of experience these things for the first time again. So I thought I would go through all of this again and remind maybe some of you expert cruisers what it was like the first time. Maybe help some of you who have your first cruise coming up and just talk about what the first day is like compared to the last day. Also, expert cruisers, please pay attention and let me know at the end if you think I missed anything. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. I've been making travel videos for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. And I also wrote a book called Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship with true stories of things that have actually happened to me while traveling around the world, like getting deserted at a nude beach in the middle of nowhere and not knowing how to get home. If you want something fun to read and to show a little extra support for what I do here on YouTube, check out Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship. It's available on Amazon now. All right, obviously, before you can depart on a cruise, you need to book a cruise. I'm not gonna go through all that, but nowadays, once you have booked a cruise, almost the entire check-in process and getting ready and getting everything that you're gonna need to actually go onto the ship, that happens online in advance on the cruise line's website or on their app. Not too long after you have actually booked your cruise, you will get a confirmation number, and then you use that number to sign up on the website or in the app. From there, you can start personalizing your experience, checking out the excursions offered if you want to add a drink package to your cruise, start saving your information in your account, like your name, age, the people cruising with you, add a payment option like a credit card for your onboard expenses, etc. Then, a bunch of time goes by before it's time to actually go to the ship. A few days before your sailing date, you will get another reminder to fill out the health questionnaire online. And once you've done that, you'll get access to your, well, on Royal Caribbean, it's called a set sail pass. Every cruise line has different names for this, but this is like the final information that you're going to need to get onto the ship. Another thing you'll need are the color-coded luggage tags that you'll be putting on your bags. So when you arrive at the port, be it with a bus transfer, a taxi, or if somebody's dropping you off there are gonna be luggage porters waiting all over the place. And what they're gonna do is take your bag down on land and it will get delivered up to your cabin like magic. So you don't actually have to carry your big suitcases onto the ship. Somebody else will do that for you, and that's why it's so important to print out these luggage tags, because if you don't print them, you can just ask them to make a baggage tag when you get there. It's actually not that big of a deal. Listen to how loud it is here. That's the atmosphere you have to be ready for. It's a big hustle bustle, but it's kind of like that every time. And this whole printing out luggage tags for your bags, getting there and then giving your suitcase to somebody before you even like get onto the ship, that is so different than when you check into a normal hotel on land. And after so many cruises, it's just something you don't think about anymore. But yeah, you show up at the pier, somebody takes your bags, and you're not going to see them until much later in the evening. Sometimes even shortly before dinner is when they'll show up at your cabin. You can and you should have a small carry-on bag with you, and in that carry-on bag, make sure you have any medication. And I always have some sunscreen in there and my swimsuit in case I want to take a dip in the pool on the first afternoon. Kind of anything you're going to need for the first couple hours on board take that with you in your backpack. Depending on what ship you are boarding and where you're boarding it and what time you get there, and if everybody's showing up at their assigned time, there may or may not be a line to get into the cruise terminal. You will have to go through a security checkpoint that's very similar to the security checkpoint in an airport, but it's a little more relaxed. You don't usually have to take your computer out of your bag or liquids and gels. I've never had to take off my shoes. They're kind of just making sure that nobody has anything dangerous or forbidden in their bags. And if you have filled out everything correctly online before you've gotten to the port, from there, there's usually just a really quick ID check. They might take your picture. If you haven't scanned your credit card yet for your onboard payment, they will ask you to do that then. And when all that is finished, you just sashay right up onto the ship. Oh, one thing that always happens between the ID check and actually getting on the ship is there'll be a picture taking station where they want to get you and the people you are with all into a pose in front of some kind of backdrop that has the name of the ship on it. You can do it if you want to. There's no obligation to buy the picture afterwards. But to tell you the truth, we never do that. I know I'm not going to buy the picture. It takes time, and at that point,
I just want to get onto the ship.
So don't feel bad if you don't want to stop and take a picture. You can just say no thank you and keep on walking. Sometimes you'll get your cruise card. That's like one of these things. Sometimes you'll get your card right there at the ID check, but nowadays more and more, they're actually waiting outside your cabin, kind of stuck to the wall. Also, sometimes when you board the ship, the cabins aren't ready and you might have to wait a while before you can actually go into your cabin. But either way, eventually you're going to end up with your cruise card, which is what you use if you're going to buy anything on board. It opens your cabin, and there's other information on here as well. Can you imagine checking into a hotel on land, them taking all your information and them telling you,
"All right, you're all checked in. Just head to room 487. The keys are on the outside of the door."
It just seems so weird, but on cruise ships, I don't know. It works. At least that's how they do it. When you are finally on board the ship, get ready for a little bit of sensory overload. There's usually a lot happening on the first day until sail away. There's going to be people trying to sell you upgrades. There'll be live music everywhere. People trying to sell you a massage, maybe a mani-pedi. That's kind of just how it always is on the first day. One of the first things you're going to want to do when you get on board is eat. That's what most people want to do when they first get on board. So expect long lines and a little bit of chaos in the buffet on the first day, and don't think that the atmosphere on the first day is going to be what it's like in the buffet every time you go there. It's just kind of extra chaotic on the first day. If you have kids with you, the first few hours on board is also a great time to go check out the kids clubs. There are different clubs and club areas for all different ages of kids, from like single digits to tweens to teens. And I know that these clubs are really popular with families. I've, of course, never been there. I was an adult when I started cruising, and I have not yet cruised with any kids. But like I said, I know that they are really popular with some kids and families, so make sure to take the time to check them out and get your kid registered if they want to participate in all the kid-focused activities on board and hang out with other cruisers their age. Another thing that you are going to have to do in the first few hours when you get on board is the safety drill, or the so-called muster drill. And this is something that has changed a lot in the past decade and kind of continues to change. So I'm going to tell you the two most popular ways that I've seen it on my recent cruises. The traditional way is, at a certain time, they will make an announcement on the ship, everything closes, and then you will have to go to a certain checkpoint in the ship, and you kind of take a class about what you would have to do if there was an emergency on board. If they're doing it the old school way, depending on how quickly everybody gets there and how quickly the class is finished, this activity could take like 25 minutes or it could take 45 minutes. They will scan your cruise card to verify that everyone was there, and after the ship's alarm is sounded so you can hear what that would sound like, everybody can go back to having fun. And if they're doing it the new way, then these classes or the information that they give you will all be in the app or in the television in your cabin. And you'll have to watch the separate videos and sort of click on them to verify that you watch them. And then after you've done all that, which you can do while you're sitting at the pool or in the buffet, you still have to go to your checkpoint, but then you're not sitting there for the class because you already did it in the app. You're probably wondering, how do you know where it is you have to go? Well, it's always listed on your cruise card. You can see here, it's the big number down here. Let me grab another card from another cruise line. Here's Celebrity. You can see it's a big number down there. And when it is time to go to your muster station or where you have to check in, there'll be crew members all over the place pointing people in the right direction. And if you look at the ceiling, you'll see green signs with these letters that point you also in the right direction. Just to be clear, this is something that everybody has to do, even if you have been on a cruise before and even if you have cruised on the same ship before. At the beginning of the cruise, everybody has to do this safety drill. And when that's over, usually that is the latest time that the cabins will be ready. So this is a good time to go to your cabin. Maybe your suitcases will be there already and you can kind of start unpacking. Standard cruise cabins are not as big as hotel rooms on land, but I think I may have exaggerated this point a little too much with my sister because when we moved into our cabin on the Independence of the Seas, she was actually pleasantly surprised with how much space there was. So just don't expect a huge palace, unless you've booked a suite, of course. Oh, by the way, don't be confused by the size of the cabin here compared to my sister. She's only like 3 feet tall, so that's gonna make everything in here look bigger. It's kind of an optical illusion. I usually unpack my stuff right away on the first day and stash my suitcase under the bed to get it out of the way. Also, you will most likely get to know your cabin steward on the first day. This is the person who comes and cleans your room and turns the bed down at night depending on what cruise line you're on. They usually come to introduce themselves and find out if you have any special wishes. So for instance, when I was cruising with my sister, they had the beds pushed together to one bed and we asked if he could separate them into 2 beds, which was no problem. You can also tell them if you're gonna need the sofa turned into a bed at night, things like that. And the next big event is for us usually just going up to watch the sail away. I think most people usually go up to the top deck to either be by the pool or the deck above the pool, and don't forget to use sunscreen. You might think,
I don't need no sunscreen. We're just gonna be up there for a couple minutes waving at land.
but trust me, it takes longer than you think and you do not want to be burned to a crisp on the first day of your cruise. Use sunscreen. Around the pool, there are usually activities happening. There's line dancing, they're doing the YMCA. You may choose to enjoy a cold beverage. And it's a fun party atmosphere where you can watch the land disappear, maybe watch another great big ship sail past you. Maybe you'll sail past another great big ship. In my opinion, when the ship is leaving port, that's the place to be as you sail off for your ocean adventure. Important note, even if you have booked some kind of international plan for your cell phone, you need to turn off roaming and mobile data when you leave land. Cruise ship internet has gotten like 100% better since I first started cruising, but if you want to use internet on the ship while you're out at sea, you're going to need to buy some kind of package from the ship, and don't use the internet in your phone. It might work, but it's going to be super expensive. I'm not joking about this because I read comments of people who didn't understand how this works and get a huge bill at the end of the month because they figured, well, if it works, I must be able to use it. If your big suitcase has not showed up in your cabin by the time sail away is over, you might want to call for your cabin steward to ask what's going on. But after sail away, you usually have an hour and a half until dinner time. And that's when Marcus and I usually end up finishing up packing, maybe take just a very short nap, and then start getting ready for dinner. Just to quickly remind you, you probably know this already, but just to go through it again really quickly, the included options on board are almost always the buffet. Eating in the buffet will never cost you extra, at least not on any of the ships I've ever been on. And then there's the main restaurant or main dining room. You will probably have an assigned time to go there. That is also included in the price of the cruise. There are other dining options. Some of them are included in the price of the cruise, and many of them cost extra, like if there's a sushi restaurant or some French restaurant on board, those usually cost extra. And don't worry, you're not going to accidentally eat there and then realize,
Oh my gosh, this costs extra.
they're pretty good at making sure everybody knows what's going on. Going to the main dining room for dinner is a tradition that a lot of cruisers like. A lot of cruisers does not, in this case, include Marcus and I. We much prefer to go to the buffet. We like to decide how much of everything we want to eat and also how long we're going to be there. And sometimes going to dinner in the main dining room on a ship takes 2 hours, and we just, I don't know, we have other things we want to do. For instance, go to see the shows. On our first night on the Independence of the Seas, after dinner, my sister and I went to see one of the ice skating shows down in the belly of the ship. Royal Caribbean is, of course, famous for having ice skating shows on almost all of their ships now, and these are really cool, sort of fantasy-filled, colorful, musical ice skating shows. Definitely worth a look, but get there early to make sure you get a seat. After the show, my sister and I went to the casino on board. Almost all major cruise ships nowadays, except for Disney Cruise Line, have a casino on board. We played a little bit, and then I think we ended up going to bed almost kind of early on the first night. And apparently I snored all night long. That's weird because Marcus has never complained about me snoring, so I'm pretty sure my sister just made it up. Anyways, that's kind of what you can expect for your first day on board a cruise ship. Like I said, experts, let me know if you think I forgot something, but now let's talk about the last day of the cruise, and I'm talking about the day that you actually leave the ship. I'm just gonna be honest with you here, the last day usually sucks. And that starts even before the last day. It kind of starts on the night before. Remember on the first day of the cruise where you printed out your luggage tags and gave them to a magical luggage fairy down on land, and then they just sort of magically appeared in your cabin later in the day? Well, you can do the whole process in reverse. If you don't want to carry your own suitcases off the ship, it makes that last morning very convenient. But in order to take advantage of this service, you're going to have to pack your bags the night before and have decided what you're going to wear on the final night, what you're going to wear to bed, and what you're going to wear the next day. And you have to take it out of your bag because basically when you go to bed that night, your suitcase is already gone. They'll put information in your cabin, also giving you luggage tags to put back onto your bags. And the time is always different, but we actually missed it on the Independence of the Seas because they had it at 10:30. Expert cruisers, does 10:30 seem early to you too? Or am I just mixing it up in my head? There is no sleeping in on that final morning of the cruise. This is another thing where every cruise line and every cruise has kind of a different deadline, but usually you will have to be out of your cabin by 10 a.m. at the latest, and sometimes earlier. Make sure you check the information in the app or the information that they deliver to the cabin. And if you do have a later flight home that afternoon, it's not like when you're at a hotel or a resort on land where you can just sort of check your bags in and then hang out at the pool all afternoon until you have to go to the airport. You have to leave the ship in the morning or they're going to start calling your name. Usually they will assign a certain time frame for you to leave, and that will be on the information they give you in the cabin, and it has to do with the color coding of the luggage tags as well. And it's best if everybody leaves during their assigned time because that helps avoid any traffic jams of people trying to navigate through the ship on the last day. And your time to leave the ship might be 7:30 a.m. It might be 8:30 a.m. So I guess what I'm trying to say is not a good idea to stay up really late on the last night and party like a rock star. You basically just have time to get up, have a quick breakfast, and then it's time to go. Speaking of breakfast, if you thought that the buffet was full on the first day of the cruise, wait until you see it on the final morning of the cruise. Just expect another sort of chaotic experience when you're trying to grab your breakfast. And once again, see if maybe there's another option like going to the main dining room or one of the cafes on board to avoid that stress. When you do go to leave the ship, make sure you have your cruise card ready because you'll have to scan it one last time and then you get to keep it as a souvenir, but it doesn't do anything after you leave the ship. You can't go to Starbucks on land and use your cruise card to buy a coffee, unfortunately. Also, don't wait until the last morning to check your onboard account to see if they've made any mistakes or if there's any expenses that you don't recognize. I usually look at my onboard account at the end of every day just to be sure, but at the very latest, do it on the evening before you leave the ship, just so you have enough time to clear any questions up. Once you are back on land, you will be able to pick up your suitcases in the port building, and depending on where your cruise started, where it went, and where it ended, you might have to go through an immigration process like in the airport where you have to show your passport or other documents before you can leave the port terminal. The process of deciding to leave the ship, actually leaving the ship, getting down to land, getting your suitcase, and getting out of the port, it could take a half an hour, it could take an hour and a half. So personally, I never book my flight home before noon because you just never know, and I don't need that stress. And on our last cruise on the Independence, once we did get out of the port terminal, it took us about 45 minutes to get an Uber to the airport because it was just so crowded and chaotic there. We've been trying to get an Uber back to the airport for about a half an hour now, and they keep the guy keeps missing the turn or turning around and going around again. We haven't seen him go past. It's pretty chaotic here. I guess much less stressful to just organize some kind of transfer in advance and not have to deal with this kind of stress, or maybe just jump in a taxi. I mean, taxi might end up costing a little bit more money, but they're waiting here, you can just hop into one. So the final points for the final day of the cruise: be prepared to wake up early. Don't plan to spend more than an hour or so on the ship. Have your cruise card ready to leave the ship and your passport ready to leave the terminal, and give yourself enough time to get to the airport because you just never know how long it's going to take. Whew! That turned out to be a lot of information. If this video informed or entertained you, please make sure you press thumbs up before you go and consider subscribing if you haven't yet. All the videos about the Independence of the Seas cruise, including our cabin tour, including our fantastic day on Labadee, our so-so experience at the extra charge restaurant we tried on board, all those videos will be going live in the next few weeks here on the Very Unofficial Travel Guide, so if you're subscribed, you'll get a notification when they go online. I just realized that my computer screen has gone to the screensaver. I wonder when that happened. Anyways, have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.